This meeting is being recorded.
So, Jai Baba, everybody, welcome to our Lord Meher book reading on another Thursday night in India, 9 p.m. Welcome, and from wherever else in the world you are. I'm sorry, the last two meetings we were not able to record or um, have them with the online edition, but we are back and we are very happy to have each one of you here. Hi, Eva, Rosalie, Marvin, Prakashji, Joshua, Meher, and
Hello.
whoever steps in. And uh, so we read the online edition, and after an hour and a half, we have a small chit chat. And yeah, so we will just, before we begin, we'll close our eyes for a minute and just connect with Baba in silence. Slowly, gently opening our eyes. We are going to read from page 1540 uh, from the online edition, and it's in from the year 1933. So Baba directed almost everyone to leave and ask Bashir in private what he really wanted. Bashir said, Baba, help me find a good job, and I'm in need of money. Baba smiled, replying with a touch of disappointment. He spelled out, See how I raised you up in the presence of the Mandali, and you have now brought it all tumbling down? You have come down from the heights of mukti, liberation, to finding employment. Baba asked Rustam to employ Bashir, and Bashir gratefully accepted Rustam's offer. Gohar Irani had moved to Ahmednagar from Quetta in 1932 with her brother, Jar. The rest of her family moved in 1933, followed Baba's warnings to leave Quetta before a terrible earthquake struck in 1935. All in the family were devoted to Baba, especially Gohar and her sister Katie. On 22nd August, Rusi Pop, as Gohar's father came to be known, arrived in Nasik. He stayed overnight and left his cousin Adi Sr. the next day for Ahmednagar. The day Baba returned to Nasik, he received an invitation from Graham Stokes in New York urging him to attend the All Faiths Conference in Chicago. A second invitation from the executive director of the conference arrived sometime later. Baba agreed to attend on the condition that if by the time he had not broken his silence, he would deliver a message to the conference through his alphabet board. The chairman of the conference was uh, intimated accordingly, and he accepted this condition. Baba was generally averse to attending any public meetings of this kind. His acceptance was therefore surprising to the Mandali. Baba decided to proceed to America, and the preparations had begun. Daily, just one second. Okay. Daily discussions were held about what the Mandali should do in Baba's absence. Should they stay in Nasik or Mehrabad, and how should they pass the time? Baba did not want to leave the men unoccupied. A meeting to work everything out was held on Saturday, 26th August 1933. There had been talk of constructing a few new buildings at Mehrabad. But if it were later decided to stay in Nasik, permanently, then constructing buildings in Mehrabad would be a waste of money and energy. Rustam suggested taking preliminary steps toward the fulfillment of his film project by engaging the Mandali's help. Baba liked this idea and decided that Behram and Pendu should learn how to operate a motion picture camera. And Jalbai should study acting. A trial film of a silent comedy was to be shot before Baba left. Plans were made for Pendu and Sidhu to travel throughout India, filming different locals, thus having scenes which would later be used in Rustam's films as required. The idea was later dropped. Pendu was to learn film developing as well as to order and manage whatever stock was required for the film work. Meenu Puhawala came on the 26th from Bijapur to meet Baba for the first time in 3 years. Abdul Jafar and his family came the next day bringing Ramju's son Dadu. In the interim, Baba had been to Bombay on 17th August 1933 for the day and went again on Monday 4th September to book his boat passage for the upcoming trip to the west. Baba saw Wafid Wajifdar, a former disciple from the Manzile Amin days, and all and an all India cricketer. Uh, a footnote, please, Prakash. Thank you. It's there, the blue sign. If you scroll up right here, yeah, click on it, double click on it. I think you'll be the only one who can see it, so you can read that.
Okay. Well, the footnote on page 1541. Although there is no record of Wajif Dar ever seeing Meher Baba again after 1933, Pendu recalled that Wajif Dar came to see Baba once in the 1950s in Bombay. Wajif Dar died in 1961. That's what the footnote said, Jai Baba.
He also met Behram, Perin, and Memo, who were living in Bombay at the time. That evening, Baba wished to take Memo and Perin out. So they went to a film, The White Sister, at the Apollo Theatre. The film, a romantic love story, had been highly recommended, but unfortunately, they could not hear a word of the dialogue and left the film much before the end. On 6 September, Baba went to Almai Kartrak's home, where he played carom with her children for a while before leaving for Nasik at 3:15 that afternoon. During September 1933, the booklet Questions and Answers were being translated from English into different languages, into Marathi by Kali Mama, K.K. Mankar, and Kelkar of Dhulia, into Gujarati by Soma Desai with Chanji's help, and into Persian by Rao Saheb, who daily read out his version to Baba. While letters and cables were being sent to the West about his upcoming visit, Baba was overseeing the Mandali's future affairs and assigning duties to each one. Kaka was serving as Baba's orderly at this time, but he went back to Bombay on 13th September. Pendu was given the duty. Baba's photograph was taken that day specially for Ramju's new book, Sri Meher Baba, His Philosophy and Teachings, and also to present to his Western devotees as they often requested his picture. Baba went over the manuscript of the book and made some corrections. At 3 p.m. of the 14th, Baba went to Syed Sahib's house for tea and a music program that lasted until 6. Nosirwan Satha arrived that day from Ahmednagar, and the Iyengar family of Madras came the following day for Baba's darshan. The Mandali's plans were changed on Friday, 15 September 1933, when Baba sent Pendu to Mehrabad with instructions to construct certain buildings there. Sailor Sidhu, Bala Supekar, and Kalingad were sent along with him. Bala was the brother of Arjun Supekar, one of the Kaspapet Mandli who had died in 1926. Kalingad originally came from Persia and had been a Meher ashram student. Since he did not want to leave Baba and return to his home after Meher ashram school disbanded, he now stayed with the men Mandali. Baba issued strict orders about the group stay and food at Mehrabad. At Upper Mehrabad, Pendu began construction of a bathroom, a tin shed, and a kitchen for Baba opposite the water tank. Kalingad, who was a good mechanic, fixed up an old bus and would carry the construction materials from Ahmednagar. An order from the British government came at this time to pull down the post office building near the railway tracks. Baba sent word from Nasik that they should try their best to have the order re resigned, rescinded. The Mandali approached various officials, but their efforts proved fruitless. They were told that the authorities themselves would do it unless they pulled the building down, as it was too near the railway tracks to comply with the current safety regulations. Rather than let outsiders do the work haphazardly, the Mandli tore down the building themselves, as he often did due to lack of funds. Baba told them to utilize some of the building materials from the post office for the new construction. Footnote, please, Prakash, just click on the blue thing. Yeah, thanks, and please read it.
Okay, Baba. 1542 footnote. After the post office was dismantled by the Mandalay, the stones were used to reconstruct the walls of the crypt cabin at Upper Mehrabad, the structure that eventually became Meher Baba's tomb. Jai Baba.
Thank you. Baba sometimes even directed them to demolish a perfectly good building in order to use the materials on some other work he wanted done. Up until this time, there was no arrangement for pumping water to Mehrabad Hill from the well below. Water was brought up daily by bullock cart. Through the influence of Khan Sahib, Pendu obtained the requisite permission from the government to lay a pipeline under the railway track to the hill. While these activities were going on at Mehrabad, preparations were speeded up by Baba for his next visit to the west. In Nasik, along with the abundant correspondence to attend to, Baba had a lot of other work to oversee and had virtually no time to rest. He had to take care of numerous details in the lives of both his men and women Mandali. He watched over his Mandali in order to turn them to dust by grinding down their age old egos. They were staying with him only to turn into dust. They had learned to bear his taunts and insults, yet Baba would assail their minds all the more to complete the grinding process. For the permanent men and women Mandali, living with Baba was like walking on the edge of a razor sharp sword. While outsiders were praised by Baba when they came for darshan, the Mandali were often insulted and humiliated in their presence. This was Baba's love, his deep love for them. It was impossible to sleep and be awake at the same time. Yet the master demanded, make the impossible possible. Thus, one can barely imagine the type of hardships and pressures to which his close Mandali were subjected. On Saturday, 16 September 1933, C.D. Deshmukh and a relative were on the way to see Baba. They were to arrive at 10 a.m. but had still not shown up by 1 p.m. Annoyed by the delay, Baba got upset with Chanji and Vishnu, declaring, you men are quite useless. I doubt whether you gave Deshmukh proper directions. Chanji replied. Correct directions were sent to him, but it is possible that he has been delayed by the heavy rains. This made Baba even more angry and he upbraided them both. He became extremely restless and asked, "What do you gain by making me so uneasy?" Vishnu and Chanji could not understand why Baba was so upset. Baba added bitterly, "I do not want to see Deshmukh now. If he comes, tell him to go away, let him die." After a while, Baba ordered somehow or other bring Deshmukh here at 3:30 p.m. Chanji and Vishnu did not know where Deshmukh was staying in Nasik. Vishnu was wondering what to do when Baba told him on second thought, "Bring him here at 2:30. If you do not, Deshmukh will die." Vishnu still had no idea where Deshmukh was. Baba took him to task. "Why are you sitting here? Go fetch him." Vishnu left and tried to find Deshmukh by visiting the houses of a few Brahmin families in Nasik. Luckily, he found Deshmukh staying in one of the homes and brought him to Baba exactly at 2:30 p.m. Soon afterward, all traffic on the Godavari bridge was brought to a standstill. The heavy rains had caused floods and the bridge was in danger of being washed out. The police had placed roadblocks across the road leading to the bridge. Had Deshmukh failed to appear at 2:30, he would have not been able to meet Baba. It was Baba's nazar that made him cross the bridge before it was closed. Only then did Chanji and Vishnu grasp the significance of Baba's foul mood and anxiousness over Deshmukh's arrival. Uh, Marvin, would you like to read next?
Sure. After hearing about Deshmukh's fiancée, Indumati, 24, Baba permitted Deshmukh to marry her, spelling out, "You are destined to marry and have found a very good companion. But don't forget to bring her to me once before you arrange everything finally. Then you'll have no worries or responsibility." The date for the wedding was set for the following April. Knowing Deshmukh's highly philosophical mind, Baba then explained to him, "You will have various thoughts, you will have doubts, and your mind will argue. But remember one thing, I am the truth. If your mind goes on wondering and wandering, let it. Do not run after it from place to place, meaning from one master or saint to another. Hold fast to me." Baba's remarks to Deshmukh were quite poignant. At one point, Deshmukh thought, "Meher Baba is a Parsi and I am a Brahmin. Baba's master, Upasi Maharaj, is also a Brahmin. Why should I not follow Upasi Maharaj? He is a Brahmin as well as Baba's master. By following him, I will derive more knowledge than from Baba. Besides, to be a devotee of a Parsi is not really befitting for me." These thoughts eventually led Deshmukh to visit Upasi Maharaj's ashram in Sakori. Deshmukh approached Upasni carrying a garland. However, as soon as Upasni saw him, he began cursing at him and shouted at him to leave immediately. Taken aback, Deshmukh stood off at a distance. Upasni spotted him and started throwing rocks at him. This frightened Deshmukh and he left, recalling the woeful stories of others who had also experienced a similar rough treatment from Upasni Maharaj. Footnote.
Okay, here you are. When Mahatma Gandhi had gone to Pasni Maharaj, Maharaj likewise had abused and taunted him with the words, "So you are the big Mahatma. What type of Mahatma are you?" That ends it. Jai Baba.
In a state of dismay, Deshmukh was grievously hurt and unfavorably impressed by Upasni's harshness and thought, "Baba is so kind. He is so full of love. Upasni Maharaj is just the opposite. To follow Meher Baba is much better." In the end, Deshmukh narrated this incident to Baba, who observed, "Upasni Maharaj is a real Sadguru. Remember that. You have no idea about the ways of the perfect masters. No one can understand them. You went to Upasni Maharaj on your own. Now, according to my order, go back to him." Bewildered, Deshmukh pleaded, "I am ready to do anything you say, Baba, except to go back to Upasni Maharaj." You do not know how furious he was and what he said to me. I cannot go back there. I am terrified of him. Baba replied, this is my order. Go to him once more to fulfill my instructions. If not, leave me and never see me again. But Baba, Deshmukh protested, I have become yours and do not wish to approach anyone else. To be mine means to keep my will. Since you cannot do it, how can you say you are mine? Asked Baba. Deshmukh felt helpless and returned home to Nagpur. Fortunately, Upasi Maharaj came afterward to visit Nagpur. Overcoming the trepidation filling his heart, Deshmukh got up the courage to go see him. He took a booklet he had recently written, My Master and His Teaching, with Meher Baba's photograph on the inside cover. Strangely enough, this time Upasi Maharaj was happy to see Deshmukh and was very gentle, kind, and considerate. He made him sit close and talked lovingly with him. Deshmukh offered his booklet about Meher Baba to Upasi Maharaj. Seeing Baba's photograph, Maharaj reverently touched the booklet to his forehead. He garlanded the book and handed it back to Deshmukh as prasad. Deshmukh was thus convinced that the harsh treatment meted out by Upasi Maharaj at Sakori was due to his own improper thoughts about Meher Baba and masterhood. From then on, he had rock-like faith in Meher Baba. Baba was invited to attend the Maharashtra Poets Conference, being held in Nasik at a local school. He agreed to make a brief appearance at the conference on 16 September. He was brought on the stage, thanked, and garlanded by one of the organizers. A lawyer named Mazumdar came to Nasik that day. Finding him anxiety-ridden, Baba consoled him. Do not brood over difficulties, and do not take them too seriously. Let things come and go. Do not worry over this and that. Keep your mind in check and steady under all circumstances. Spirituality is so simple, but the pundits, the priests, and Vedantists have given it so many names and aspects, filling up pages and pages of volume after volume with dry philosophy. Ordinary people are puzzled as to what to accept and what to reject, what to do and what not to do. It has assumed such an aspect and has gone to such a degree that anything simple given as practice to a spiritual aspirant is not taken seriously. It is taken lightly and rejected, so that even masters have to put some polished coating on these simple things and appear solemn, serene, and dignified. But I will not do that with you. I will make it very simple. For the first 15 days, sit aloof and alone for 5 minutes every day. Let the thoughts come and go for 2 minutes without trying to check them. Then think of me for 3 minutes. Do this for 15 days and then stop for 15 days. Then do it again for 15 days and again stop for 15 days and so on. If you do as I tell you, you will not only understand, but feel it wholly inwardly. Plans having been finalized for his next trip to Europe, Baba left Nasik for Bombay on Saturday, the 23rd September, 1933. He was interviewed the next night in Dardar by newspaper reporters. On the 25th, Baba sailed for Europe on the MV Kanti Verdi, accompanied this time by Adi Jr., Chanji, and Kaka. It was his 6th foreign trip in 2 years. Baba had a comfortable cabin and took walks on the deck for an hour in the morning and again for an hour in the afternoon, remaining in his cabin for the rest of the time. According to his instructions, no one on board the ship was informed of his presence. Nevertheless, after 2 days at sea, on the evening of 27 September, while Baba was discussing matters with the Mandali after dinner, there was a knock at the cabin door at 9 p.m. Chanji opened it and stepped out to find a very dignified-looking older man standing in the hallway. Introducing himself, the gentleman said, I am Sir Akbar Haidari, and I wish to see Meher Baba tomorrow morning, if he will allow me to visit for a few minutes. May I know what time will be convenient for him? Chanji went inside to inform Baba, who instructed, tell him that though I am not seeing anyone during the voyage, I will see him for 5 minutes tomorrow morning at 10. Chanji accordingly informed the old man, who seemed very pleased, saying that he had heard much about Meher Baba and had longed for an opportunity to meet him. Akbar Haidari, 64, was the Dewan of Hyderabad, an important government official, similar to a chief minister.
Okay, here is
But no.
yeah. Sir Akbar Haidari was later appointed governor of Assam under Prime Minister Nehru. His name is sometimes spelled as Haidari, H-Y-D-A-R-I.
He came the next morning to meet Baba, who was pleased to see him. After the usual introductions and pleasantries, the conversation turned to spirituality. Baba explained about the 3 types of faith. Haidari said, turn me toward the second stage where I can feel and experience God. Baba assured him of help, replying, I will send you instructions for this tomorrow. Haidari requested that Baba give an appointment to his wife, as she would also be pleased to meet him. Baba indicated that the following day at 5 p.m. would be suitable. Haidari left with his spirit greatly uplifted. Baba liked the old man very much. He was genuinely interested in spirituality, a trait Baba always appreciated. Baba also liked it that he was humble despite his high government position. That same day, 28 September, the celebrated Indian dancer Uday Shankar, 33, came to see Baba. He had found out about Baba in Europe through the Swiss sculptress and art historian Alice Bonner, who had been to India with Shankar 4 years before and was defraying the expenses of the visit of Shankar's dance troupe to the West. While in Europe, Narina, Elizabeth, and Quinton had met Uday Shankar and had spoken to him of their master. Do we have a footnote?
Yes. So it goes, at his zenith, Uday Shankar's dance ability was compared in greatness with Russian dancer Vaslav Nijinsky, although it was classical Indian dance and not classical ballet. Uday was the older brother of the famous sitarist Ravi Shankar, who also met Baba at this time. Alice Bonner subsequently moved to India and made Benares her home from 1936 to 1978.
Uday Shankar bowed reverently to Baba, who praised him and expressed appreciation for his talent. He told Baba, I want to introduce and spread Indian classical dance to the West, but some organizations in India criticize me. They want money from me for their institutions, organizations, and societies, but I have no money to give them. Baba spelled out on his board, every good work has to face opposition, and the reaction of the opposition offered always helps the work. You need not worry. Continue conscientiously with your work with double the zeal in the right direction. Shankar then said, Baba, I would like to give a dance performance for you one day. Baba replied, I would be delighted to see it. Shankar was extremely happy to have Baba's darshan, but Baba cautioned him before they parted. Do not inform anyone on the ship about me, as I do not wish to meet anybody. See me before disembarking in Brindisi. That night, cables were received from Narina and Graham Stokes in New York and Kitty in London, saying that the majority of delegates attending the All Faiths Conference in Chicago had left and it was about to end. The news made Baba feel relieved, as he was never keen to participate in the conference. It was only to please Stokes, Rustam, and his other lovers that Baba had played this role by agreeing to attend. The conference had already scheduled and announced a meeting on 29 October, to hear Meher Baba's address, but Stoke was informed that they would not be able to arrange any accommodation for Baba and his group or contribute to any of his expenses. One of the executives of the conference sent a telegram from Chicago suggesting that Baba cancel his visit, which Baba did.
Here, the footnote says the conference, which coincided with the Chicago World's Fair, was organized by the Fellowship of Faiths and is known as the Second World's Parliament of Religions. 44,000 delegates attended.
After receiving the cable, Baba decided instead to stay a month in Europe and then return to India. The next day, Mr. Munshi, a Parsi from Hyderabad, came to see Baba. He had composed a poem in Persian about Baba, which he wished to recite. But when the man came face to face with Baba, he could not utter a word in the master's presence. He stood transfixed, gazing at Baba, then quietly left. The following day, Mr. Munshi tearfully told Chanji, I wanted to kiss Baba's Sadra, but I could not do so, thinking it would be disrespectful. I could see nothing but light around Baba. I cannot explain it. It is the greatest good fortune to have had his darshan, and my great luck to have met him. What a privilege to be traveling with him on the same ship. I feel that this is why I've been sent to the West, only so I could meet a buzurg, a great being like Baba. Mr. Munshi subsequently told some of the other passengers about Meher Baba. On Sunday, 1st October 1933, Baba complained that he had a terrible toothache. Adi Jr. approached the ship's doctor, who refused to dispense any medicine without first seeing the patient. Chanji tried to circumvent this by going to him with the request that he be given some medicine for gargling. The doctor, however, mistook him for the patient Adi had spoken to him about and promptly examined Chanji's teeth. Chanji protested that his teeth were fine and that he did not feel that he did not need any medicine. Even though Chanji tried to explain that he was not the patient, the doctor ignored his pleas and applied the medicine to Chanji's teeth. He told him to sit still for half an hour. After 15 minutes, the doctor poured a very bitter preparation into Chanji's mouth. Chanji had gone to fetch medicine for Baba, only to return with a bitter taste in his mouth. Okay, I'll pass the reading on now.
Rosalie, would you like to read?
Yes. Meanwhile, Baba found the incident humorous and tolerated his toothache until it subsided. Since the Mandalay were not mixing with the other passengers and were not seen except at meal times in the dining room, there was varying speculation among the passengers about their real identities. Some erroneously took them to be successful businessmen who traveled around the world, as they carried briefcases and were always busy with papers and correspondence and sending telegrams any time of the day or night. Having seen them speak frequently with Akbar Haidari, some assume they must be high government officials who were involved in the round table conference going on in London. Baba seldom had any visitors or left his cabin, except for an hour walk in the morning and afternoon. He wanted to stay aloof, and he found his accommodations to be very comfortable this voyage. The ship docked at Port Said on the morning of 2nd October, and the Maharani of Indore, Mrs. Yeshwantrao Holkar, came to Baba's cabin for his darshan with her secretary. At the time, Baba was out for his morning walk on deck, and someone directed her there. As she approached, Chanji intercepted her, saying, Meher Baba only gives darshan after making an appointment. I will have to ask his permission and let you know. The secretary explained that the Maharani had not come to ask anything of Meher Baba, but that she only wanted his darshan. Chandji reiterated that he would ask Baba and inform them. But they followed him and came face to face with Baba before Chandji could seek Baba's permission. Baba was wearing European clothes and, for his own reason, did not want any Indian to see him in that attire. Baba explained to them, as I do not wish to meet anyone while outside on deck, I dress like an ordinary man to avoid being recognized. No one knows me as I really am. For those who want to know my real self, I have no need to put on such a show. But I am afraid of those who have no longing to know me truly and have to hide my identity from them. I therefore must go about incognito. A meeting with Baba was scheduled for the Maharani. Akbar Haidari and his wife had come to see Baba at noon on 29th September. We are both miserable, Lady Haidari admitted. Our son, Ali, is a drunkard and a spendthrift. We are terribly worried about him. Baba consoled them, assuring them that there was no cause for worry, and their son would be all right after 2 months. Lady Haidari asked if she could bring their son to him, and Baba indicated at another time. They happily left, and Baba thereafter began sending them messages each day with Chandji. On 2nd October 1933, Sir Haidari's son intended to get off in Port Said, and his mother was anxious about it. She did not wish him to go ashore, fearing he would end up drunk and a source of troubling embarrassment to them. Baba sent a message telling them not to be afraid and to ask their son not to disembark. Accordingly, they told their son, who obeyed them, strangely enough, without an argument. The parents were quite relieved. Sir Haidari again saw Baba, who assured him, I will keep an eye on your son. Do not worry in the least. During the coming 2 months, he will have a relapse and go on a binge twice. You should not worry on these occasions, for he will thereafter totally give up alcohol. Haidari invited Baba to Hyderabad and expressed his desire to return to India on the Conte Raso, on which he had been told Baba would be traveling. After he left, Baba sent another message with Chandji, who went to their cabin. But Sir Haidari had already retired for the night. Lady Haidari answered the door and told Chandji, Baba showered his mercy on us yesterday. It was his blessing. Our son would otherwise never have listened to us. Please convey our grateful thanks to him. May he ever have his nazar on us. Chandji repeated Baba's message about the son's future 2 drunks and told her not to worry. She asked if it would be possible for him to give it up immediately. Do not be anxious. This too will pass, Chandji said. Lady Haidari then said, we are resigned to Baba's will. Now, what about my son's operation in London on his leg? Is there any danger? Chandji assured her that everything will be all right. Convey our salams and thanks to Meher Baba, Lady Haidari said before wishing him good night. Baba sent Chanji to Sir Haidari a few more times that night, and Chanji once had to wake him to give him Baba's message. The son had not wanted to see Baba at first and had refused his parents' request to do so. But now the son told Chanji on his own, "Give my salams to Meher Baba and tell him that I will surely come to see him. Due to the pain in my leg, I am unable to do so just now. But inshallah, God willing, I will definitely come tomorrow. When will His Holiness see me?" Chanji replied at about 10 o'clock and that he would come to get him. The father had entreated Baba, "By your power, draw him to you." When they found their son's welcome change of mind, their joy knew no bounds, and they were deeply grateful to Baba. Thereupon, at 12:30 on Wednesday, the 4th of October, 1933, Ali Hardari visited Baba. After a cordial introduction, Baba explained to him what kind of nature the mind has that it becomes a slave of desires and continues to do so, turning the desires into habits. It is next to impossible for a person to extricate himself from a set pattern of habits. If he is freed, he is saved. He who gives up habits attains God, but habits are a great harassment on the path. They bring even a good soul to ruin. Citing Pleader as an example, Baba continued, "A man once came to me with a prayer to show him the spiritual path. I told him that if he followed what I said, he would surely find it, and he agreed. I instructed him to lock himself up in a room, keep silence, not read or write, and remain on milk only. For the last 4 years, he has been doing it, and he is radiantly happy. This is called Nod, divine infatuation. And this type of nod makes one realize God. There once was a man who had the bad habit of smoking cigarettes. He could not give up smoking, and he came to me for help. Since he has been with me, he has not smoked even once in the past 5 years. In short, a bad habit ruins a man. It makes the mind, body, and soul miserable and makes all those around you unhappy too. Real life consists of making others happy. So try to make people around you happy. Do not be afraid. All will be well. Do not worry. My Nazar is on you. Grateful. Ali Haidari expressed his feelings of reverence for the master and left. Entering that morning at 10 a.m., the Maharani of Indore had come with her secretary to see Baba for about 15 minutes. Baba was dressed in a sadra at the time, and his long hair was down. Baba informed the queen, "This is my customary dress. It is the clothing I wear in front of those who come to know me. To those who take me for a foreigner, I become a foreigner. I did not wish to meet you as a foreigner, so it is good that you have come today. Do I not look like a fellow countryman now?" The Maharani laughed, and Baba continued by dictating a discourse. Everything depends on the mind. The mind feeds on happiness and misery. The world is really a dream. Happiness and sorrow are plays of the mind. There is no substance in either. In fact, the mind exists to endeavor to see God, but it leaves this aside and becomes caught up in the world. I want this. I want that. It shouts. The mind gets one entangled in Maya and thereby increases desires. No sooner is one desire satisfied than another is there ready to be satisfied. Thus, one after another, desires increase without limit, and they never bring freedom to anyone. So the man who has control over the mind possesses the whole universe. He has no use for happiness, suffering, health, wealth, or anything else. He is beyond all that. The Maharani was satisfied with Baba's discourse and left. Shortly thereafter, Uday Shankar arrived to talk about his dance program. Baba remarked to him, "One day, perhaps in Chicago, I shall give you darshan." The boat stopped in Brindisi, Italy at 9:30 a.m. on the 5th and left port 2 hours later. That afternoon, Mr. Munshi came at 4:30 for 10 minutes. Thereafter, Akbar and Lady Harderi saw Baba at 5 o'clock. He comforted them again and urged them not to worry about their son. Baba and the Mandali arrived in Venice at 9 o'clock on the morning of Friday, 6th October, 1933. Enid Korf, Kitty, and Minta came to welcome them, along with an Englishman named Bill Presse, who had previously met Baba in London. Baba proceeded from the pier to the Hotel International, where the group stayed. After lunch, they went for a walk to St. Mark's Square. Early the next morning, Baba, accompanied by all, returned to St. Mark's Square, which he quietly circumambulated. They then went to the train station at 10 a.m. Just as they were about to board a train, and with half the luggage already loaded, Baba turned to Kitty and asked, "Do you have our passports?" Kitty replied, "No, Baba. Don't the boys, Mandali, have them?" Kitty had given them to the clerk in the hotel when they registered. In the hurry of leaving that morning, she had forgotten to collect them. The train was about to leave and Baba gave orders to unload the luggage. Kitty was distraught over her negligence, but Baba was as calm as ever, spelling on the board, "Do not worry, we will have lunch and have a gondola ride on the canal. I can do more work here and we can take the night train to Paris." A telegram was sent to Ruano in Paris about the delay. Kitty thereby learned more about the master's ever-constant vigilance. Many of the Indian passengers from their ship were on that train, so it appeared Baba wished to avoid further contact with them also. Enid left for Milan on the 2:30 p.m. train. Baba went for a stroll with Kitty and Minta, while the Mandali stayed at the station to watch over their belongings. Baba and the group left Venice on the 6:50 p.m. train and reached Milan that evening at 11:30. Even at that late hour, Mr. Winfred and two others were waiting to see him. The group arrived in Paris at 2:00 Sunday afternoon, 8 October 1933. Ruano, Nerina, and Quentin were present at the station to greet them. Baba checked into the hotel of Louisville and then went to Ruano's apartment at 16 Rue Lauriston, where about 50 people had gathered for his darshan. He saw them all in less than 3 hours. Among those he met were Otto Hasse, his ex-wife, Countess Victoria Eulenberg, and their daughter, Otara.
Footnote. Countess Victoria was the daughter of Prince Eulenberg, a close friend of Kaiser Wilhelm II, and a member of the German royalty.
When Ruano's daughter, Biju Martin, went in to see Baba, Ruano introduced her saying, "Baba dear, this is Biju, my baby." Biju Biju immediately said, "Mother is much more of a baby than I am." Baba spelled out on the board, Baba also means baby. So we are 3 babies. Baba was so loving to Ruano and her daughter that both were deeply affected, causing Ruano to ask Baba why he was so kind to her and Biju. Baba revealed, "Because you were kind to me long ago in Egypt." Footnote.
Chalula Bankhead was a friend of Biju Martin and had stayed at Biju's apartment in New York for a time around 1920, and both were unknown actresses.
A photograph and a complimentary article about Baba appeared in a Parisian newspaper, and several French people were anxious to meet him. Despite that, Baba left for London at 8:20 the next morning. There were now 10 people traveling with him. They arrived at 2 p.m. in Dover and were met by a few Western lovers. Elizabeth Patterson drove Baba, Minta, Will Beckett, and Herbert Davy to London, while the others went by train. They reached London on the evening of the 9th and stayed at Hygeia House, a vegetarian boarding house at 37 Warrington Crescent. Intense activity began the next day. All the birds gathered near their heart's treasure, Age recorded. And this time a few more flowers and blossoms appeared in the garden. Stephanie Haggard, Charles Purdom, Delia de Leon, Will and Mary Beckett, Margaret Krask, Elizabeth, Kitty, Norina, Ruano, and Quentin had already begun singing. And during this stay in London, a few more persons came into Baba's intimate contact. The next day, after lunch at Stephanie's, 93A Brondesbury Road, Baba met several new people. Among them was Dorothy Greenside, an author of spiritual books, who told Baba, quotes, "I felt within myself an inspiration which enabled me to write. But all of a sudden, the power seemed to diminish and was lost. I have no desire to write anymore," end quote. Baba replied, These were mere glimpses. They are always temporary and fleeting, but I will help you. You are not to blame. It was not your fault that this inspiration and power have gone away. The reason is that it was not the time. The time was not right for you to have that power, for it to appear and for you to retain it. It is no fault of yours, but with my help, you will have the inspiration. You will regain it, and it will then always be with you. One day you will be able to help humanity much through your writings. Baba's words were so reassuring that Mrs. Greenside felt comforted and happy, firmly believing that she would regain her power of vision and intuition. Later, she sent Baba one of her books and asked for some spiritual practice she could do to, quotes, purify, end quotes, herself, so that she might be worthy to be one of Baba's disciples. Another noteworthy contact during this visit was a young woman named Winifred A. Forster. One day she was sitting at Baba's feet and gazing at Baba. She thought, I do love you, Baba. Although Baba was surrounded by other people, he glanced at her, picked up the board and spelled, quotes, that is why I do not have you near me. Winifred was deeply touched. She understood Baba was indicating that for his work with her, if such a deep inner connection was maintained, there was no need for her to be physically near him. Baba met with Herbert from 3 to 5 p.m. Some things in particular were bothering Herbert, and Baba discussed matters with him at considerable length. Herbert spoke out, quote, you promised to speak, but you do not do it. What? Lower it, please, a little, couple lines. What will the world think of you? Baba replied, it is good for mankind, rather than essential, to adhere to religious and moral principles and observe religious bindings. But for the spiritual path, they are unnecessary. I am beyond all principles, bindings, laws, and matters pertaining to worldly duties. I am perfect, and for me there is no restraint or binding. I have broken all barriers, and I have gone beyond all laws. According to the moral code of this world, one's word or promise is considered by mankind to be sacred. But he who has gone beyond time, space, cause, and effect is not limited by anything. For him, there is no such thing as bondage. The infinite cannot be bound by anything finite, however sublime the aim may be. This means that one cannot limit the limitless. For this reason, and without your asking, I give you promises, and your aim will be fulfilled at the proper time. But I also know that a promise can be a time-serving device. It is not meant for fulfillment, but necessitated by circumstances. It is a demand of the situation, and so I do not care for its resultant reaction. Therefore, I do not worry about the world's criticism or its terrible slander and harm to my work for not keeping my promise. I purposely create and court such opposing reactions and nurture them. Such an opposition is required for my work to give it a great punch. I am beyond praise and slander, and they do not affect me in the least. All those who care for name and fame and worldly success, fearing criticism and scandal, are only ordinary human beings. They want to preserve their prestige at any cost. Their, quotes, name, end quotes, alone matters to them above money, life, and everything else. I am the truth. No amount of voluminous praise will raise me higher, nor can any carping criticism pull me down. I am what I am and will ever be so. So whatever I do for my work, which encompasses and sees to the welfare of all. On 11 October 1933, a woman visitor asked Baba, quotes, when a person is surrounded on all sides by untoward circumstances and difficulties without any avenue of escape, would he or she be justified in doing something which would ordinarily be termed undesirable or indecent? End quote. Baba answered, it is justifiable for a person in such circumstances to do anything, provided there is no personal self-interest or pleasure involved. For example, if in order to pick up a silver coin from a pile of excrement, a person soils his hand and then washes it, he cannot be blamed for doing so. He dirties his hand with a certain purpose in mind and washes it after his objective is achieved. It is no sin. Here is another example. Suppose a man is facing adverse circumstances on all sides. His family is starving, and one member is on his deathbed. The man has no wherewithal to provide nourishment or medicine for his dying relative and is quite helpless. In this case, if the man has to resort to undesirable or even illicit means to save the life of another without any thought for himself or his own happiness, he is justified in doing so. He is forced to do it out of selfless motives to save the lives of others. In brief, this means that however wicked an action may seem to be, it should not be judged on the basis of the world's standards of morality, but purely on the underlying motives. This is a spiritual point of view or standard of judgment, however shocking or absurd it may seem to the worldly minded. Lieutenant Commander A.B.B. James also saw Baba on the morning of 11 October. When he arrived, he seemed depressed and confused. He looked like a broken, unhappy man, for his child was seriously ill, and it caused him and his wife tremendous suffering. Baba had promised him the previous year that the child would recover, and their story had been given wide publicity in the newspapers. The fact that Baba's assurance had remained unfulfilled added to the couple's worries. The man's friends and relatives had criticized his faith and devotion to Meher Baba. Commander James had grown desperate and was on the verge of suicide. Baba pacified him and promised that the child would be cured in another 6 months. Thus, James would be relieved of his anxieties. Baba explained to him, "My promise was given last year for certain spiritual reasons of my own. I gave it of my own accord, unasked, knowing full well that it would not be fulfilled and would cause much suffering, which was necessary for your spiritual benefit and in consideration of the connection of you and your child with me in past lives." James was visibly relieved and afterward drove Baba and the Mandali in his car through Regent's Park. Delia's brother Jack made the Q Theater available to Baba and the group on the evening of the 11th. Baba went there and saw Margaret, Norina, Vivian, Mabel, Quentin, Minta, Anita, and Delia perform different types of dances and humorous skits. Minta danced a rumba with Quentin, for which Margaret did the choreography. Norina acted in a short play, but she got carried away, took off her shoe, and knocked Minta on the head. Baba thoroughly enjoyed the evening's entertainment. One person who had not come to see Baba was Margaret's pupil, Audrey Williams. For his own reasons, Baba wished to maintain contact with her. Even though Audrey had acted badly with both Margaret and Kitty, often asking for money, Audrey was leaving London the following day, but Baba wanted a message delivered to her. So Kitty and Margaret were sent to contact her. Harry Strachan, editor of the Occult Review, came to see Baba on 13th October 1933. Quotes, "No amount of intellect, reading, and learning can enable one to understand it, reality, thoroughly," Baba told him. Strutton was an intellectual, yet had been highly impressed upon his first meeting with Baba in 1931. Kitty's brother, Ernest Davy, and a friend came the same day, as did Sir Akbar and Lady Haidari, Mr. Munchie, and Charles Purdom. To an artist who had an interview on the 13th, Baba explained, quote, "You are expressing the infinite one through your artwork, though quite unconsciously. It is there in you already, as it is everywhere. Every human being, consciously or unconsciously, is struggling for that source of all existence and all bliss. That is the goal of life. It is only a question of time," end quotes. Mabel Besant Scott, 63, came to visit Baba the next day. She was the daughter of Annie Besant, who had passed away in India in September. Footnote.
Yeah, so here it says Annie Besant, 1847 to 1933, was a British theosophist and reformer. She went to India where she campaigned for nationalism and became president of the Indian National Congress. In the 1920s, along with fellow Theosophists, she proclaimed the mystic Krishnamurti to be the Messiah. 4 of the Meredith Starr's poems were published in Besant's magazine, the Adyar Bulletin, from 1921 to 1927.
Mabel Scott had also lived in India for a few years, assisting her mother. She said, "I had come to see a friend of mine, but when I learned that you were staying here too, I came to see you. I am extremely pleased to meet you."
Thank you, Rosalie. Eva, would you read next?
Sure. I am also very happy to have met you, Baba indicated. They talked about her mother, and Baba remarked, she will be born as a man in India. I also think so, said Mrs. Scott. She loved India so much. She now greatly needs rest. Reassuring her, Baba stated, the world is now inclined towards materialism, and to turn towards the higher values of life, it needs help. I will give it this help. I believe you will truly do so, said Mrs. Scott. God is the supporter of everything and the source of all, and he is present in all, but he is to be realized and revealed. I will help you toward that end, Baba promised. I am indebted to you, she replied. An Egyptian diplomat asked Baba, what kind of prayer is best? Baba answered in one word, love. The Polish pianist Arthur Rubinstein, 46, and his young wife Nella, 25, were friends of Herbert's and came to see Baba on the 14th. Music is one of the mediums for the expression of the infinite, Baba told Rubinstein, and musicians are more inclined towards spirituality, as spirituality touches the heart. Rubinstein was an agnostic, but proud of his Jewish heritage, and mentioned that Jews did not have a tradition of worshiping a personal God. Nevertheless, Rubinstein generously offered Baba the use of his home to host a gathering. He also offered Baba 2 complimentary tickets to a concert at Queen's Hall, where his associate, Sir Henry Wood, was conducting a program of classical music. And footnote.
Yep. This one says, Sir Henry Wood had met Baba at Queen's Hall 2 years before. That's pretty short. Read again. Sir Henry Wood had met Baba at Queen's Hall 2 years before.
Thank you. Baba did not end up using either Rubinstein's home or the tickets. After meeting other interested persons, that afternoon at 2:30, Baba went back to the Q Theater to see a variety show. That night, Baba agreed to meet the other, mostly Indian, residents of Hygeia House, but stipulated that he would only shake hands, not answer questions. On one occasion, Baba harshly scolded Adi Jr. for giving away a Parsi cap, which Anita had requested. This was quite contrary to Baba's order to not give anything to anyone. Anita pleaded guilty for her participation, and Baba forgave her but Adi was on the verge of tears from the embarrassing verbal trashing in the presence of others. William Duncan, 22, a medical student at St. Bartholomew's Hospital, had made a trip on camelback across the Sahara Desert the year before and was unconsciously drawn to search for the aim of life. He was also interested in spiritual healing and had visited several centers in London, investigating different approaches to relieving pain through meditation, hypnotism, and the use of magnets. Duncan first heard of Meher Baba when he happened to purchase a recent copy of the Occult Review in which Baba was mentioned. And footnote.
Wow, this one is very short. Occult Review, November 1933. I guess they're giving the time and year of the publication.
Okay, thank you. He contacted Harry Stratton and learned of an office dedicated to Baba at Charing Cross, where he met Will Beckett and others. Hearing of Baba's presence in London, Duncan came to see him. Baba expressed his great happiness at meeting this particular young man and remarked to him, "A follower of mine in India is studying medicine. I have asked him to be a doctor. His name is Nikanth, and he will come to stay with me after his studies are completed. A large hospital will then be opened on the ashram premises, but I will need another doctor who knows surgery." Duncan said, "I am studying medicine at St. Bartholomew's. Should I specialize in surgery?" "That would be good," Baba answered. "Study it if you wish." Duncan replied, "I find surgery interesting and will definitely study it." Baba appreciated Duncan's intent. As Duncan left the room, he received a sudden shock as he placed his hand upon the door handle. In that instant, he later said, he knew that Meher Baba was God. For a week after meeting the master, this young man continually had divine experiences. He was so full of joy, he saw Baba everywhere. This joy is deep, so deep that it can only be experienced, not described. But the experience brought William Duncan to Meher Baba's feet, for he was destined to become a permanent member of the Mandali 6 years later. Among those who had interviews with Baba on Sunday, 15 October 1933, was a couple who asked Baba about present world conditions. Baba commented, "There is every likelihood of war. Otherwise, if it is averted, there will be greater chaos in the world." So, in other words, chaotic conditions are inevitable. It has to happen to reach the stage of everlasting peace. The spark that will set it off will occur within a year. It will be in full swing in a year and a half and last for 2 years. I have to play a leading part in that drama. To Elsie Henry Domville, who was providing financial support for the film Baba wished to make, Baba spoke about creation. Creation, as you see it, has to come out of me, from the minutest speck to the vastest expanse. Creation is made up of two things, space and energy. When you go back to that creation point, even space does not exist there. No space, no energy, no time. Beyond this point is the infinite one in its real form. That is Baba. And I, from that beyond state, look upon this creation, which has come out of the minutest point of me. That state is looking on. That state of looking on is the fourth dimension. On Monday, 16 October 1933, Baba went to the Kohinoor restaurant for lunch with a large group of 22 people.
The footnote says the Indian restaurant was located at 15 Percy Street, W.1. I guess that's zip code. 15 Percy Street. There you go.
Thank you. In the afternoon, Baba discussed his future plans with Kitty and a few other very close ones. Baba preferred to return to India via Marseille on the Viceroy of India, indicating, "For my work, it is necessary that I visit Spain." Kitty was instructed to begin making the changed arrangements, provided it went easily. Baba went for an afternoon drive to Kim Tolhurst's house. Afterward, during a stroll about London, a serious incident occurred that involved Kim. Baba, Chanji, Kitty, Margaret, and Kim were walking along when Kim became very upset about something. Overcome by her mood, she ran away, leaving the rest to follow. She got into a cab and they hailed the next one. Kim's taxi drove straight to Piccadilly Circus and stopped at a Scottish tea house. Baba sent Kitty to fetch her, but Kim refused to come out. This was direct disobedience to Baba, deliberate and not careless. Kitty returned to the cab and Baba decided they should leave her. Baba spelled out on the board, "Kim will never again see me in this life." She never did. Baba went to dinner that evening at Countess Palin's house at 23 Jubilee Place, King's Road in Chelsea, and was accompanied by Herbert, Kitty, Vivienne, Quentin, Elizabeth, Norina, Stephanie, Chanji, Kaka, and Adi Jr. The Countess had invited about 15 of her friends, who were mostly exiled Russian royalty. The next day was quiet for Baba and spent intimately with his close ones. All sat quietly around him in the afternoon from 2 to 5 o'clock. Baba remarked that he was in a rare state of being pulled from the highest to the lowest level, causing him to suffer terribly. Baba again broached the subject of going to Spain, reiterating that it was important for him to go there. "If travel to Spain is easily arranged, I will go, but for 1 week only, not 2, and then return immediately to India via Marseille." Baba was invited on the 17th evening to a vaudeville show at the Prince of Wales Theatre, where he went with a few of his lovers. Baba had a special reason for going, and that was to establish contact with the person who had lovingly invited him, regardless of what others thought about his visiting such a lowbrow review. The avatar comes on earth to do his work and does not care if the whole world is against him. He cares for nothing but his universal work. Baba sat in the theater for a while, saw one dance, and decided to leave. Baba met with a few visitors on Wednesday, 18 October, 1933, and had private interviews with the Kimco group in the afternoon. Charles Purdom came and discussed with Shanji and Herbert details about life and travels for a book he was planning to write. At night, Baba visited Margaret and Mabel's dance studio, where Margaret danced for Baba and wept like a child before him. Estelle C. Gailey, known as Nani, was the widow of a prominent New York attorney. She was then 58 years old. Her daughter Madeline, called Rano, was 31 and an artist who had worked for some years designing fabrics in New York. They had learned about Meher Baba in Paris the previous summer through their friend Ruano and her contact Quentin, and had expected to meet Baba in America when they returned there. Ruano was now in London with Baba and had written Nani and Rano as soon as she found out about Baba's change in plans, and they had immediately left for London. Upon reaching London, it was difficult for them to find out where Baba was staying. Ruano had cabled the address, but Rano had not received it. Nani was in tears, repeating, "Where's Baba? Where's Baba?" Rano comforted her, and they both checked into a hotel. Rano phoned the English-speaking union, as her correspondence with Ruano had been through its address, and she was given Ruano's telephone number. When Rano called, Ruano informed her where Baba was staying. Rano asked when they could meet Baba and was told that it would be at 4 that afternoon.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So we are on page 1562. Next week we can read from here. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'll pause the recording now.